Congressman, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Before I get into all the fun stuff today, yesterday, the president made this big announcement about funding and NATO. I got to be honest with you. I keep thinking this is the new America First way. Washington's been told you got to go one way or another, and President Trump shows us there's a third way. And yesterday he said, guess what? We can have American companies make munitions and weapon systems, and then NATO will buy them, which we'll profit off of, and then Ukraine gets the weapons. To me, that is the essence of America First. What do you think about this approach, and how do you think it's going to be received among your colleagues?
Well, I think what we've seen under President Trump is a return to a foreign policy rooted in realism and restraint. You know, I think that a lot of Republicans, especially the Republican base, has been burned by a foreign policy that is rooted in starting new wars that we don't see an end to, and we don't see what path to victory looks like, and we don't understand why we're engaged in these conflicts. And what we've seen under President Trump is a much more restrained idea of America's role in the world. That's not isolationism, but that's to say that we are pursuing our interests for our people, and we have specific goals in mind, and we understand what other countries are thinking here. I think that that's what we're seeing. I fully trust the president in how he's approaching Russia right now.
Yeah. All right. I want to get on to what's going on Capitol Hill this week. The Senate's got this rescission package. You've been a leader in exposing a lot of the fraud and the waste. You're a member of the DOJ committee on the House. You're a member of the Budget Committee. I can't believe that we are having a discussion about Republicans who may not support cuts to NPR and PBS in this day and age.
Yeah, you know, the amazing thing about this is that Republicans have been talking about defunding NPR and PBS for decades now. You know, I grew up on a cattle ranch. I remember growing up reading books and listening to books while I was out working on the ranch about how these are left-wing institutions that should not be receiving taxpayer dollars. This is nothing new. And finally, we have a president who is actually fulfilling those promises and delivering for the American people. But think about what NPR and PBS are and what they actually do. NPR is an institution that is run by leftists exclusively. They very famously, during the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, said that they weren't going to cover it because, in their words, it was nothing more than a distraction. That was one of the biggest news stories of the decade that they deliberately chose not to cover. PBS, we see them running cartoons with transgender characters geared towards young children. I mean, these are institutions promoting values at taxpayer expense that most Americans find repulsive. And finally, we defunded them in the House. The Senate's got this bill. I hope they take this up as is. Don't change it. These institutions need to lose their taxpayer funding. We don't need state-sponsored media in the United States, and that's what these are.
And so that's where I actually 100% agree with you. Like, first of all, I agree with you on the political piece, just so we're clear. That being said, I don't understand why, in this day and age or ever, we need the government in the business of the news organization. Like, to me, that's antithetical to, the government shouldn't be doing it, regardless if it's left or right. Now, in this case, it's far left, but I just don't understand. To me, and to your point about being on a cattle ranch growing up, maybe in some areas of rural America, this was important back then. But it's not anymore. We don't have issues of getting information the same way that we did.
Right. You know, to your point, you know, if Fox News or Newsmax or the Sean Spicer show came to me and they said, I want taxpayer dollars, I would tell them absolutely not. I would say, I like your show. I like what you're doing, but I don't think that you should be getting taxpayer handouts. I certainly don't think that left-wing propaganda outlets should be receiving our tax dollars. You know, this funding has been going on for a long time. And historically, what you would hear the other side say is things like, well, rural areas won't know what the weather is if they don't have local radio stations telling them. And I'm thinking, you know, the internet was invented. I mean, most even family farms have precision farming where they're, plowing and planting their fields with satellite GPS systems. They're going to be just fine. They don't need some leftist at NPR to tell them what the weather forecast looks like. So that's just ridiculous. And to your point, maybe that made sense in 1970. It certainly does not right now. But go ahead.
No, I'm intrigued. When you say this, like, what I don't get is why this are, like, to me, I'm embarrassed for our party when we're having a discussion and some people are saying, yeah, but. It's like Susan Collins represents Maine. That's not even far from Boston. They get, meaning that like a lot of the information they're getting. So the idea that somehow people in Maine are dependent on left-wing news outlets funded by the government doesn't pass the smell test.
No, it doesn't. And, the other thing is why should we be funding our enemies? We talk about we want to keep a majority in the House, and we certainly do. We do not want to lose the House. We don't want to lose the Senate. We want to expand our majorities. So why should we use our majorities to then fund people who are attacking Republicans and running cover for Democrats? That is politically suicidal. It's insane. One of the other things that we would hear them say, and I think that this was historically one of the reasons why this funding continued, is they would say, well, we don't want to be the party that defunds Big Bird or Elmo. Sesame Street was run by PBS. And what the left would do is they would march Big Bird all over Capitol Hill, and they would go up to different members of Congress, and they would say, Sesame Street is great. Why are you the jerk who is defunding these guys? Well, PBS spun off Sesame Street years ago. HBO bought them up. That's not an issue anymore. There is absolutely no reason right now, either morally or politically, that we should be funding these institutions.
Let me just give you one newsflash, because I used to be the communications director for the House Budget Committee. Big Bird's a millionaire. Do you know how much, your point, like they spun this stuff off, all that merch that kids have, Big Bird and Mr. Snuffleupagus and all that, like they make millions of dollars off merch and licensing. These guys, the Children's Television Network are millionaires, and we're then giving them more tax dollars. So let's be honest, like it's an insane proposition. But you speak about the people. Like I want to play for the audience a clip of you talking to the head of NPR at a congressional hearing. I want to play a snippet for folks. Take a look.
Do you believe that America is addicted to white supremacy?
I believe that I tweeted that, and as I've said earlier, I believe much of my thinking has evolved over the last half decade.
It has evolved. Why did you tweet that?
I don't recall the exact context, sir, so I wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. Do you believe that America believes in black plunder and white democracy?
I don't believe that, sir.
You tweeted that in reference to a book you were reading at the time, apparently, The Case for Reparations.
I don't think I've ever read that book, sir.
You tweeted about it. You said you took a day off to fully read The Case for Reparations. You put that on Twitter in January of 2020.
Apologies, I don't recall that I did.
Okay.
I'd no doubt that your tweet there is correct.
Okay. But the reason I play this clip, Congressman, is you equally eviscerated the CEO of 23andMe and asked her about pronouns. And she said, I don't know what these pronouns are that apparently 23andMe says if they're not used will create harm to trans people. And the through line that I see when you question these people is this. They want to take this moral stand about what's right and wrong and how we should all behave. But then when Brandon Gill questions them on why they did it, they go, I don't know what that is. I didn't do that, did I? And there's a sense that they do it in a rush to sort of appease the woke left, but they actually don't even know what they said or why they said it.
That's right. Take Catherine Marr, for instance, there. Listen, if you believe in race-based reparations, and she tweeted that she did, why don't you, I gave her the floor. Why don't you explain to the American people why you believe that? If that is your view. If you believe that, there was another instance where I asked her if white people inherently feel superior to other races, which is what she had essentially tweeted out. If you believe that, why don't you explain to the American people why you believe that? Have the courage of your convictions. But I think the reality is, in her case especially, is that there was a time period from maybe 2014 to 2022 when the left was ascendant, whenever you had people like her who knew that the way to rise up through the ranks in these left-wing institutions was to promote these utterly idiotic beliefs and espouse talking points that normally you only hear in the far left corners of academia. Things about whether it's reparations or the transgender movement or these weird pronouns or whatever it is. And they used that as a way to get ahead. And now I think the American people have seen this stuff and they see how repugnant their views were. And now the left will not stand by them. If you ask them in a black and white way, they know. And I think she might believe some of this stuff, but she knows that she cannot say on record that she believes in race-based reparations because the American people find that disgusting. I would encourage Democrats to have the courage to actually say in a straightforward way what they believe, because right now their entire strategy is to obfuscate everything that they've said over the past 10 years.
So you ask this woman about a book that she tweeted about, and she says, I don't recall the book. Now, look, I'm not the most prolific reader, but I read a good number of books, so I can't say I remember every book. But I'll tell you this, if I took a day off of work to actually read a book, I'd remember that, because I don't think I've ever taken a day off of work unless it was like in high school when I didn't really take a day off. I just literally had forgotten to read it all semester and was trying to cram it. But I think that like what intrigues me is that when you prep for this stuff, do you ever anticipate that? I literally watch these answers and you're like, well, here's your tweet. This is what you said. And I'm sort of taken back by, do they not think like that you have the receipts? And so when you prep for this, what are you anticipating as a response? Are you like, wow, I'm going to get him again, or they can't be this stupid?
Well, to be very candid with you, during that hearing, I was really taken aback by her responses. I expected her to either defend or deflect from what she had said. I was shocked that she tried to say on the record that she never said these things. I mean, how do you not remember or at least anticipate that the person questioning you is going to go through your public statements? I mean, we didn't even have to dig that deep. These are things on Twitter. You can pull it up right now and scroll through her Twitter feed and find these things. And remember, this was a big hearing for NPR and PBS, right? We're looking at defunding them. They get about $535 million every year. So it's a big deal for them to come prepared. And she had an army of lawyers sitting behind her during that hearing who had prepped her extensively. But apparently they neglected to go through some of the things that she had said. Honestly, I was baffled and a little taken aback.
Not only that, but like when I testified in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I want to get to this in a second. And my team and I went through each member of the committee and said, okay, Brandon Gill, he's going to pull out your old tweets. Congressman so-and-so, he's going to do this. Congresswoman so-and-so. I mean, obviously it was senators. But to your point, I was like, have you not watched the Brandon Gill movie? This is what he does. He's going to go through your stuff. And I was blown away. But speaking of that, I testified in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee about Biden, his use of the auto pen and the cover-up. You're on the Oversight Committee. Where do, like Dr. O'Connor, Biden's doctor, blew you guys off the other day, claimed the Fifth Amendment, which I was like, dude, what did you do? Because something's not there. Where do we go from here with respect to figuring out what they knew and when they knew it, especially after this week when the New York Times says that his idea of he basically delegated pardons to his chief of staff, Jeff Zients?
Yeah, so right now we are in the fact-finding phase of this investigation, and we are getting more and more damning information every single day. The amazing thing about the deposition with the doctor is that not only did he claim the Fifth, but he claimed the Fifth on questions like, did anybody direct you to lie about Joe Biden's health publicly? He claimed the Fifth on that. To me, that should be a very straightforward question. That just raises more questions that I think we need to ask of what was actually going on behind the scenes. We have many more depositions coming with multiple different members of Joe Biden's staff, because this appears to be, and the more information we get confirms this, one of the biggest cover-ups in modern political history. I mean, they deliberately lied about the mental state of the President of the United States. That is egregious. And, the other thing we're learning, and we learned a lot from that New York Times expose where Biden gave an interview to them, is that not only did he not know who was being pardoned, what he did is he would give here's criteria for who could be on this pardon list. Well, that pardon list was then taken by his staff, and he would approve it, but then they would change who was on the list and approve it with the auto pen without telling the president. So not only were these people not individually vetted by the president, but even the people who were on the list based on his own criteria were changed without him knowing it. And, he did what they're saying now is that there were too many pardons. There's no way he could have signed all of these because he pardoned thousands of people. There were only 25 pardon orders because some of these were done en masse, sort of a big group of people with one signature. I can sign 25 documents in less than 90 seconds. I think most able, mentally capable people can do that as well. But the amazing thing is, of those 25, there was one pardon that he signed with his hand. And you know who that was? That was Hunter Biden. So there's so many rats in this investigation. We're going to keep digging up as much as we can because I think that we're really just scratching the surface.
I agree. By the way, the signature is less important to me than the intent. He didn't know who was getting them, and he says that in the interview with the New York Times. One last thing I'll say to you before you leave. I think Karine Jean-Pierre said that he ran circles around here. That's a fact. She's not a doctor. I think you call her in and say, what did you base that judgment on? Because then you can get at the doctor through her because she has to have come up with some basis to say it. That's my suggestion to you guys. Congressman, I appreciate you being here. I know your time is valuable, and keep going.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me.
You bet, man. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.